So here we are again for the next episode of Shit Happens Catalyst Conversations. And today with me, I have somebody who might call himself life coach, but also a psychologist. So today we're also going into maybe a little bit of therapy, a little bit of coaching, and also talk about what it means to have these different methodologies to go deep into yourself, to start a shift, start a transformation, get rid of the limiting blocks, and just, start doing stuff. So with me today, I have Gonzalo, and today we will also talk a lot about self-sabotage. But maybe first, tell me about some recent change that happened to you or maybe to your clients, because we are here all about transformation and shifts.
I would say if I would have to talk about recent shifts, I would say I could not pinpoint a big recent shift. I think my shift has been like over the years within that shift, things that catalyzed bigger and bigger shifts, right? I think that the first one for me was being diagnosed with OCD. And being in a mind where I had so many intrusive and negative thoughts, to the point where I would believe that those thoughts were real, and they weren't allowing me to be in touch with reality.
Wow.
Yes.
So how do you handle with these things? How do you manage life?
That's a very good question, because as a kid, I didn't know how to manage that, right? It felt as though it would be quite impossible to manage it. And it felt as though this is something that I'm just doomed for life to experience forever. And those thoughts went from imagining that I had lung cancer to imagining anything that you can possibly imagine that could go wrong, or maybe thinking that I'm a bad person, and then I would believe that thought, right?
Wow. So you don't come across as a negative person. You come across like very positive, optimistic person. So you're either hiding this very well, or you are like in a better place already.
Yeah. So the thing is, so I'm just gonna give an intro of what obsessive compulsive disorder is for our audience. Like, so everyone has intrusive thoughts, right? Like, you go on the street and then you might imagine, oh, what if like I kick someone? Like, it might not happen to you, but for a lot of people, they do experience these intrusive thoughts where it's like, well, what if I do this? Or what if all of a sudden this happens, right? With people with obsessive compulsive disorder, like the word says, they obsess over the thought because they believe the thought is true. So then they feel guilty for thinking about it. So I would feel guilty for thinking about it. And that's the obsessive part. And then the compulsive part is, wow, I have this negative thought. How do I get it off of me? So I would do like certain rituals, right? Like, for example, if I had a thought that I had lung cancer, my grandfather died of lung cancer, by the way. So if I had a thought that I had lung cancer, I would scratch my lungs, thinking that way the cancer would get off of me. And then disorder essentially is disorder, obviously, right? So obsessive compulsive disorder. There's an obsession, there's a compulsion, and it's essentially an anxiety disorder because you get anxious with the thought. Now, for the logical, conscious mind, that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, why would you believe your thoughts? But then you start to look at society, who the majority of them don't necessarily have OCD, because actually OCD, I think it's like, it touches around, and I might be wrong about this, but it touches around 3% of the population. So very little population has like severe OCD.
But maybe it's like, TV that has kind of popularized it, and now everybody's like, oh yeah, I have OCD, because it was like Monk and, all these popular TV series. So maybe that's people actually want to believe, oh, I also have OCD, but they're just, they don't really have it.
Exactly. And thank you for bringing this up. And if you want, we can get into that like topic later on, because I think the same thing is happening with depression. Like
Everyone's,
now,
oh, I'm depressed.
yeah. And it's like people who experience pathological depression, it doesn't surprise me when they get pissed about other people saying they're depressed, because to me, it feels like the OCD aspect, right? Like some people tell me, oh, I feel like I have OCD too. And it's like, yeah, sure, you could have nuances of the OCD, but you don't know what it means to be pathologically, to have OCD. Never the mind, I do agree that even to myself, I would say, do not identify, Gonzalo, do not identify yourself with that, because that's also victimizing yourself, right?
Yeah, so maybe you're just experiencing OCD, but it's not you.
Exactly.
And I think another thing that everybody has is ADHD. So depression, ADHD, OCD, because nowadays it's like people praise themselves for having these special things, because it's kind of like an excuse.
Yes.
To not do something, maybe to not change your life, because, oh, I can't, I have ADHD, I have OCD, and I'm also depressed. That's why I can't change. That's why I'm stuck.
Yes.
It's kind of like a modern excuse.
100%. 100%. And, but at that point I was a kid, right? So I didn't know how to handle this. And so I reached out to, my parents reached out to a psychologist. That didn't work out very well. So then my mom turned out to have a friend who is my godmother, by the way, her best friend, who turns out to be a psychologist, and she treated me. I decided not to take medication since day one. Like,
as a child already?
As a child.
Wow.
I think God speaks to us in so many ways. And I think specifically in that sense, God always was speaking to me like, you don't need medication, right? Or the universe, whatever you want to call it. I don't say God in a religious way. But basically, I went through these sessions, and she taught me about the power of observing my mind. And she told me that every time that I would have an obsessive compulsive disorder, and every time I would make a compulsion to get the thought off of my mind, is it good?
Yeah.
Okay. To put like to write down like what do you call it? Like a line, right? So for every time you would make a compulsion for the obsessive thought, you mark like a line. And
okay, there's like 5.
Like, yeah, exactly.
1, 2, 3, 4,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that would mean like, okay, 5 times did my mind tell me something and I made a compulsion, right? So that would be to track my progress as far as my improvement in terms of how often could I just ignore the thought, and how often would I actually fall into the trap of doing the compulsion. And so the point of this was, like I said, to track the progression, but also the other exercise that my psychologist taught me to do with my mind is tell your brain that that those thoughts are true. Not because they are true, but because that way, when a kid is nagging you all the time, telling you, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and you're like, yeah, sure, you want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do this,
okay,
yeah, you want to do this,
yeah.
But what my point is, like, the child might get tired of you telling him that, like, and so the trick was to make my own brain tired of trying to convince me of something that is not true by telling the brain that it is true, even though it's not. And so then the stress in my mind would kind of slow down, and then I would be more aware of my own mind and more aware of the fact that that thought was just a lie. But I had to tell it that it was right, because people with OCD are afraid that the thought is true. So the more you tell it that it's true without actually believing that it's true, the more the mind gets tired.
Wow.
And the more, I know it sounds super difficult to understand, but it was something that helped me to at least understand how the mind works.
You had to use quite a lot of your mind already as a child.
Yes.
You had to go very, very deep.
Yes.
And now you also like guiding other people through that kind of similar processes, I guess.
I would say I'm only treating one person with OCD, so that's in my therapy job per se. But everyone else, I'm coaching them on self-sabotage, which it's not OCD, but it has some similarities.
So it's some nuances because, like you said, OCD
Yes.
3% of people, so it's hard to find OCD people anyway.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess this is also a good place where to talk about coaching versus therapy. So you do both in a way.
Yes.
How would you characterize these different methodologies?
Very good question. I would say, first of all, the coaching usually focuses on the healthy side, whereas therapy focuses on the, I would say, the traumas, right?
Yeah.
Coaching has a more futuristic view, as in how do we use all of your suffering to go forward? Whereas therapy, it's more like, okay, no, let's like
go back into the suffering.
Deepen into the suffering so that you allow the trauma to be felt. And when it's felt, you release it because you're no longer fighting against it.
So it's like coaching goes into the future, therapy goes a bit into the past.
Yes.
And all of this is happening in the present.
Yes.
So you're bringing everything together.
Yes, exactly.
So if you have some client, how do you decide, okay, this one needs therapy, this one needs coaching? Do you switch between the different modalities when you're talking to a person?
Well, energy doesn't lie, right? So with some people, I might be in the middle of a conversation and notice that in that moment, the energy is calling for therapy because the person is clearly talking about how much pain they feel and unsolved trauma they feel. So I might have to take it through the therapy branch. And some people have other wants and needs that have to do with moving forward, but then something from the past might come up, and it's like, okay, we have to be able to look at that for you to keep moving forward without feeling like there's something off, right? And so sometimes it requires a combination. Some clients have more of a coaching approach. Some others have more of a therapist approach. But I would say mostly it's combined.
Yeah, I feel that for some people, therapy might seem scary as well, but coaching, I'm well, I'm okay, I'm moving forward. So maybe people don't want to go into therapy, but into coaching, of course. I'm an awesome person, of course I'm going into coaching. So that can also be, it's just a word, but still it has like some kind of meaning as well for people.
So for me, even though I'm labeled as a life coach on Instagram or whatever, like for some reason I do attract people who are willing to dive deep into the therapeutic part. Because I have a tendency of attracting these kind of people, and I think that's vibrational, right? I think as someone who experienced this OCD and who has had a lot of inner suffering, obviously people feel called in a way when it comes to working with me. So I feel like I would say people have a tendency of even though I say I'm a life coach, people, I feel like people also perceive me as a therapist in that sense.
So what is usually the catalyst for people to come to you? Is it because they feel like this very extreme pain and they want to get out of this? Or is it because they see like, okay, there's this nice goal and they want to start moving towards it? What's usually the starting point?
Yeah, usually the starting point is the pain. It's not a goal. So it might be that I feel socially awkward and I don't know how to be myself around people because I think that they are intellectually more interesting than me. And so I don't allow myself to, share my thoughts or my feelings about a certain topic. It might be that I procrastinate a lot and I can get myself to do things because life feels like nonsense, It might feel like, I'm eager to get to somewhere like very badly, and I can't even enjoy the present moment because I'm always thinking about what's coming next, and I want what's coming next to come back. To I want to have it now. And so, and also an interesting side of it that is that I usually also attract artists and athletes as well.
Two ways, artists and artists. They're like also like very different people, but
yeah,
maybe there is something that they have in common. Do they have something in common?
Yeah, I would say so. Like, and especially for artists or athletes that are entrepreneurs, you know, we're dealing with money blockages, right? We're dealing with money related blockages. We're dealing with self-sabotage related programming or self-sabotage, like I don't know, I'm not going to reach that, or I'm not capable of doing this, or you know, these kind of self-sabotage thoughts that keep them in that limited identity, and they think they are that limited identity. So it's like, okay, I have to invite them to get out of themselves, to be able to look at themselves and see where the blockage is. And once they see that, it's way easier for them to unblock it, because they start to see other possibilities of how to perceive themselves.
Yeah, because artist, athlete, so I'm also an athlete, so it's very easy to get stuck in this identity. And when you want to go into business and also become entrepreneur, there might be like, you know, some, okay, how do I do this? Because you're so attached to this one identity.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're giving them this chance to expand and to do something more with their own life, and just to have like multiple identities, maybe not just this one.
Yes, exactly. And I would say my main focus is not so much expansion. It is also expansion, but the main one is self-awareness. So to be self-aware of what I'm feeling now, to be self-aware of what I'm thinking now, I think that self-awareness brings enough energy to then expand. The expansion part maybe has to do with helping them cultivate habits that are aligned with the person they want to be, you know? But my strategy is to help them understand that they already are who they want to be. They just have to let go of the thoughts that keep them in the identity that think they're not that. Does that make sense? So it's more of a release process. It's not so much of a getting to a point.
Yeah, you're not adding, you're just letting go of some stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, in my own clarity catalyst coaching, my first step is always, okay, identify what is the thing that the person wants, what kind of shift, what kind of transformation. Then I go very deep into the why. So do you also go into that core reason? Okay, why do you want this thing? Why do you want to have this new identity? Why do you want to get out of this blockage, for example?
I would say I don't go so much into the why as I go into the what for, you know? And that's because as a coach, the way they taught me about coaching is that we don't focus really on the why. We focus on the what for. What is it for? Like, what do you want to get out of this, right?
Actually, I would say that, that's the same for me, because when I ask the why, I also ask like multiple times. So if somebody says, okay, I want to have, I don't know, I want to have this new job. Okay, what does it give to you?
Right.
So it's actually like what for. So maybe you will get this new job, you will also gain more opportunities, you will have a broadened network, and then you will meet your soulmate, and then you will, you know, it's like a sequence of different things.
Yes.
Or if somebody wants to like lose 5 kilos, this will give them confidence, then they get promotion at work, then they get more money, then they travel, and you know, there's always like a sequence. There's always like a deeper reason. So I would say my why is also like what for, but I just have different wording for this.
Yes. I would say, like, because they taught me so much about the distinction of therapy and coaching and the
Mhm.
why and the what for. The why has to do with the intrinsic inner reason, and the what for has to do with the external result.
Mm.
But I mean, I get what you're saying, because usually when you ask why, people will think of like what for too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's also interesting to separate them as, like, for example, for me, it's like, if I focus on why I'm life coaching, it's because I enjoy it.
Why do you enjoy it? What does it give you?
Right. So I enjoy it because it makes me happy to see people discover themselves through their own blockages. And that brings me joy. That brings me, it even brings me a sense of gratitude where I even feel like crying, but like of love, right? Now, if I focus in the what for, well, it might be to feel more fulfilled on my day-to-day basis, to feel that I am aligned with my mission, you know? See, so mission has to do more with or I feel like we tend to associate it with future, and why we tend to associate it with like the feeling, you know? But whatever, it's just words, I guess.
So yeah, it's just words. In the end, it's the meaning that matters.
Exactly.
And so yeah, in my own coaching, I also deal a lot with the limiting beliefs and blockages. So that's usually the second step on the journey. And you also mentioned self-sabotage. So this means you're working a lot with the limiting beliefs and blockages and the thoughts.
Definitely.
So how do you do it? Is there like some special method to go through this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the method is basically to ask them. For example, I have this client who's a rapper, so he raps. And sometimes, like, he feels like something is stopping him from going to the studio and doing music, right? And it's like, okay, I ask him, how do you feel when, you feel like you want to do music, but there's something stopping you? It's like, well, I feel resistance. Okay. And where does this resistance come from? Where do you feel it in the body? And he says, well, here in my stomach, in my solar plexus, right? And I'll be like, okay, feel it. Allow yourself to feel it. Now, if you had to translate that feeling into a sentence, what would the sentence be? And he might say, I don't feel like doing it, right? And I'm like, okay, you don't feel like doing it. And what makes you not feel like doing it? And it's like, well, the fact that I want it to be perfect, and I think of all the steps that I have to take for it to be perfect, and then I'm just like, that's just too much work. And it's like, okay, and why do you have to have it perfect? And they'll be like, well, because, if I don't have it perfect, then I don't feel like it's enough. And why don't you feel that like it's not enough? Well, because I don't feel enough. And then so you get to the root, right?
Yeah.
And the belief system is I am not enough. So then PNL, right? NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I invite them to transform that sentence into something that is positive oriented, but at the same time, it feels realistic. It feels real. So that might be, I'm learning to feel enough for who I am and not for what I do or for what I achieve, right? Because often when people say I am enough, that might feel a little like false,
The
because
brain is not believing it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I help them restructure their mind frame, their subconscious language, so that they perceive themselves in a way where they feel like they're progressing and learning how to love themselves. And so then they learn how to gain more momentum and feeling a little more energetic about doing that task.
Yeah, because if you're on this side where you're like, I'm awful, then it's very hard to just overnight start to believe I am awesome. So it's kind of like you're putting them into this process, and they're like progressing from A to B. So
Yes.
even if I'm not amazing, awesome right now, I'm progressing, I'm learning, I'm trying. So you're kind of like, they also start like believing in themselves a little bit more every day.
Yes.
So it's kind of like building a muscle.
Yes, building a muscle.
But the mental one.
Exactly. It's building the mental muscle, but it's important that through the journey of building up the muscle, they integrate the fact that it's not about what they achieve, but it's about what they become as they work on this mental muscle, right?
Yeah, I feel this is also a very important part, because it's always not about the result. It's always not about the end goal. It's about the progress, the process.
Yes.
Who you are becoming while you're doing it. And when you become this new kind of person, new version of you, what kind of opportunities are now opening up for you? What can you do now that you have gone through this journey? So, for example, I used to be long distance runner for more than 10 years. So I finished 20 marathons and all that. And 5 years ago, I switched to bodybuilding because I just wanted to do something harder, more difficult. Because in bodybuilding, you have to weigh your food, you have to be very precise. And it's not only training. So in running, you just run. And the nutrition is like so for most runners. But in bodybuilding, it's nutrition very on point. It's the lifting, heavy weights, and it's also posing classes. Posing was actually the hardest part. You just have to like flex your muscles, and it has to look effortless. Although your lower back is hurting a lot, you have heels like this if you are a woman. So I just wanted to do something harder. And I didn't do all this just to be 3 minutes on the stage with the spray tan and the makeup, and you do 3 minutes and then you leave. I did it for the whole journey, the whole process, because I knew, okay, it's going to be difficult. I also had a lot of emotional issues because at some point I was eating very, very little, or like energy deficit all the time. The body fat was also going down. So, constant brain fog, the mind is not functioning. In the evening, I was just sitting on the sofa. I was like, I can't even lift my arm. 1 month before competition, that's where you are. You're like, but I was like, okay, still, this is growing me. This is making me stronger. And if I can do this, I can do anything. So I was also becoming like a stronger person. And as you are also working a lot with athletes, because you are somehow attracting them, you might also have noticed that, somebody has been athlete, after they finish, they also have the discipline and the determination to do anything, like build a business or build a different kind of life.
Yes.
So you can take all these skills and the personality and just do anything.
Yes, exactly. I think it's very interesting how you chose that, not because of the end goal, but because of what you would learn through the process of experiencing that pain.
Yeah, I had been running for 10 years and I was getting like bored. I was like, okay, I'm not going to run a marathon under 3 hours. So my max was like 3:15. I was like, okay, I'm stuck. So, okay, I want to do something harder, not easier. I could have just, stopped competitive stuff, but I was, okay, I want to compete. I'm not going to just lift. I want to be on the stage. I want to do the hard stuff. I want to see what's possible and see what kind of person I can become. Because of course, bodybuilding shape, you can't maintain it for a long time. It's just the competition, and then it's like, it's going away again because it's not healthy to maintain. So I knew, okay, it's going to be like this one big moment. And after this, I will go not back to normal, but like little bit back to the older shape, but still my mind will be different because I will have gone through this very intense period of competition.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think was your motivation for experiencing, may I ask?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think your motivation was for experiencing that journey as a bodybuilder?
I've always liked to be on the stage. So
Okay.
before that, already 5 years before, I was doing burlesque. So I was like putting on different personas, different costumes, and dancing on the stage, and also stripping quite a lot.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I like to be on the stage. I like to be visible. And again, maybe there's also like a little bit of trauma not being visible in my teenage years.
Okay.
So, but when I'm on the stage, I know, okay, this is my moment. Now everybody's watching, everybody's listening. So now I'm also doing some public speaking. And I love this moment when I'm like, okay, it's my moment. They are listening. I don't have to like be like, hey, I'm here, because it's like I'm on the stage. They can see. And it feels so empowering.
Okay.
So I like this empowering feeling. And I also get this stage high a little bit, because I was already doing the different kind of dances and things. And when you're like on the stage, I think that I also step into some like a superhero version of me, and it's addictive.
It's addictive.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's addictive.
Okay.
It feels so good to be on the stage. I'm like, and I feel like so inspired to do that. It's not because I'm like, oh my God, everybody look at me up, but it feels so good. And when I'm in my power, I feel that I can also inspire more people. And I can like kind of build my legacy and just share everything and anything that I have learned.
That's interesting. It sounds like the trauma was a gift for you to give service to other people in being an example for empowering yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Because I was like the nerd at school. I was always like maybe also a little bit bullied in a way. I was academically very, very successful, but I didn't fit in. But yeah, also if you go into human design as a manifestor, I am like closed aura. Nobody understands what the hell is going on. So maybe that's also the case. And
you're a manifestor.
Manifestor.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the only being in human design who has the closed aura. So even the universe doesn't understand what the hell is happening unless I use my throat, unless I use my voice to express what is happening.
Okay, interesting.
So I guess from the outside, many people couldn't understand me, what was going on in my head. And this is also the manifestor aura is pushing people away a little bit. So it's magnetic to certain people, but it's also pushing away the people that I don't need.
Okay.
But of course, if you are like a teenager and you want to be like popular and fit in, this can be very painful.
Right.
Because you always feel like, okay, I'm always outside. Nobody's inviting me to any place. I'm like,
Right.
I still had friends, but I wanted more. I wanted to be visible. And of course, manifestors very often feel that, okay, we have many things to say. We are doing something big. We have some kind of mission. So that was my natural manifestor. I think, my natural manifestorness, wanted to get out, wanted to be out there, just share something.
Right. It seems to me like, in a way, manifestors have like they have a more challenging job or work in life to really love themselves, to not look for that love outside of themselves.
Yeah, because we are not supposed to do whatever anybody else is doing. We are like, direct connection to the universe. And this means that, okay, I'm not supposed to respond or react. I just have to do something crazy, because manifestors are bringing the new stuff.
Right.
And if you're bringing something new, people are like, this is unfamiliar. This is weird. I don't like it. Take it away. Because, everything new can also be scary. But still, manifestors are also doing, they're doing a lot of crazy stuff. Like Marie Curie, also the guy who built the Eiffel Tower. But also, of course, there are the angry manifestors like Hitler, Stalin, Putin. So
those were manifestors.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I did a little bit of research when I was writing my book about manifestors, and there's like a lot of very amazing people, like artists and people who are doing like, and also Joan of Arc, so the French Revolution. So there are people who are bringing a lot of new change, but sometimes it's like, and also Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh, he's a manifestor.
Yeah, bringing peace to the world.
Okay.
but always like, very different from other people.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Right. It's like the people who are here to revolutionize history.
Yeah.
But of course, human beings are creatures of habit. And as soon as like a big change comes, it's like feeling of rejection almost, right?
Yeah, and you might be recognized when you're like dead, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
If you're lucky, you will be recognized sooner. But sometimes, with manifestors, it's like it's so super weird, so people are maybe not ready yet.
But again, it's more of an invitation for manifestors to recognize themselves in their day-to-day basis. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you feel as a projector who needs to be invited?
Yes. It's funny because as someone who had OCD, of course, even though I was able to transcend it, there's still some residual OCD within me still to this day, right? So sometimes I get very obsessed with different sources of information. So sometimes I might think, oh, okay, so if I have to be invited, that means I just have to wait. And I associate that with like not taking action, which is not true, because I've come to learn that it's not only about being invited from the outside, but it's also about being invited from the inside. So I might have an intuitive knowing that, for example, the intimate circle, like this idea was not something that I thought too much about it. It just came in my mind. It's like, oh my God, I think it'd be so interesting to create like a community where people come together, talk about their problems. And I'm kind of like the moderator for having a conversation between all of us on how we can look at the problem from different perspectives. And then we can, in that way, solve the problem, or maybe look at it from a different perspective so that we can have different perspective about the problem.
So you kind of felt like this energetic invitation to
Yes.
start that kind of community or circle.
Exactly. And I'm not a manifestor, but hey, I started it. It worked out very well. And so this makes me realize that human design, astrology, et cetera, they're just tools, right? They're not absolute truths, but they definitely point towards something that resonates, right? Like I do resonate with me having to be invited in order to, because my experience has taught me that even before I knew about human design, I would notice the best projects were the ones where I was invited, whether it's externally or internally, but where I feel an invitation, right? So as a projector, I also had to deal with, oh my God, like, why are so many people like working so many hours and I don't feel like doing that. I must be doing something wrong. Am I lazy? Like, and then that would lead me to doing things from a place of not wanting to feel lazy, but not from a place of actually being creative.
And so that's also conditioning.
Conditioning.
You have to hustle, be busy,
yes,
be productive, always do more. So, but this is more like for generators.
Exactly. And like, honestly, sometimes I allow myself on a Monday to wake up at whatever time I want, maybe 8 a.m. without an alarm. And I do slow mornings, and that turns out to work very well for me because I don't have the pressure, the inner pressure of, oh, you got to do this and then this and this, that. No, it's like I go in my own rhythm, and then the creativity just starts like moving through me. And it's almost like I become a channel, and then I start journaling as if I was channeling something. And that was way more productive than doing this, and that, which I might have thought those were priorities, but they weren't really priorities. Nowadays, we prioritize things that are not a priority. We have to make sure that our inbox is clear. And it's like, well, do you even realize how many of those messages are irrelevant right now for you and that are like not important? And you could have given your time and space to play the guitar or to nurture your body or something. So like, I think that's also the job of a projector, to really prioritize the tasks and do little by little.
I've also heard that projectors, if they're like aligned, they actually move very fast because you also see the most optimal, the most efficient way of doing things. So it's kind of like, I've heard this metaphor, projector is like this bird. So if everybody in the jungle is at a watering hole, you're like this bird sitting on the tree and you can see everything and you have this bird's eye view and you can see what's the best way to do things because you're like higher and you have the big picture view as well. So projectors know how to do things in the most optimal, efficient way, but
Yes.
you have to be invited to say, hey, please tell me how to do this in the best way. If you just go in and you're like, you have to do it like this, then it's not accepted.
Yes. I'm trying to think of examples where that has happened for me, where I took the initiative. I mean, I could give an example, like I'm starting the second edition of the Intimate Circle this year. I started in 2003. And because I was like genuinely invited in the inside, right? It worked out very well from the beginning. But this year is different. This year is more like a continuation, and I'm noticing that I'm not getting too much feedback, you know? Whereas feeling invited in 2023 to do this project, I did get a lot of feedback. So that could be one example. Another example could be like even my personal brand, coaching, personal, not brand, but like, yeah, brand, personal brand.
Yeah.
It didn't start because I had the idea of initiating that. It started because when COVID happened, my mom texted me and she was like, hey, Gonzalo, I think people would really benefit from you creating an account and giving people support because of what's happening with this COVID thing. Psychologically, people are scared, you know, so like you should start this. So something resonated.
Yeah.
Invitation. So something resonated, and it turned out to be the job that is, you know, bringing me food on the table right now. So like,
wow.
That was definitely an example of a projector-based action in a way. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this intimate circle. So if people hear the word intimate, it's like, oh my God, are you touching each other?
Yeah.
Or is it more like on this emotional, mental level, just talking about
Yes, it's more stuff? Yes, it's more, thank you for that. It's more of a intimate in an emotional and mental level. And I want people to feel supported and to feel like they're not alone with their problems, that there are other people experiencing similar problems. And the idea is to basically have a deep conversation about whatever topic comes up. I'm also visualizing it as something that I want it to be very energetic, in the sense that I want the present moment to just, you know, bring about whatever topic is alive in that moment. That doesn't mean that some sessions I like to structure them a little bit before starting them, but usually I like to see what's going on in the energy, in the present moment, right? And then we go from there. And then who knows, maybe the topic about relationships comes up, you know, and okay, and then people share about their relationship problems, and I ask them questions so that they can get to the root of the problem, and they can see how they are responsible of that problem, and how they can solve it by being, or at least be aware of it by being honest with themselves about how they're dealing with it, right? So then through the power of asking the right questions, then they kind of internalize the answer, maybe find it, maybe not. The point is to connect.
So it's like a circle, or are you like, is there like one person talking and then you're like coaching and guiding with the questions?
So it's a circle, and it's like a mix between like coaching people, but also having a conversation between us where people share their perspectives, and also people coming up in different in as like so I partner them up, and they do like coaching exercises where I tell them, okay, so now you're going to be the coach and you're going to be the coachee. So as a coach, try to ask questions that invite the person to give long answers, so the person can find the answers by expressing themselves. enough, and your job is to give them enough space for them to kind of find out what's going on within themselves. And then we switch roles, right? So that might be one exercise.
So people also get this experience, what it feels like to be a coach.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then another exercise that I make them do is like a writing exercise with 2 or 3 questions, what are you not letting go of? And then they write for a few minutes, and then they share the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And then another conversation sparks from there. And so it's kind of like this cool dynamic that I feel can help many people.
Yeah, I feel this kind of intimacy is quite needed. So today I was also listening to Stephen Bartlett's podcast, The Diary of a CEO, and he had a psychologist, Bill something, I can't remember the name, but he was also saying that nowadays, people very often live alone. So in 1850, it was like only 1% of Americans was living alone, but now it's like, most people are living alone because very often, like women work now, so everybody has their own money, they don't need to live with somebody else. But actually people are getting more unhappy because they are living alone and they lack that connection. And this psychologist was also underlining how people are more about this individual stuff. I want this thing for me. So they don't really connect with other people, and they don't really build relationships together.
Yes.
So I also noticing something like this.
Yes, 100%.
Everybody's so like individual, but I'm like, but actually in relationships, this is like, there are so many opportunities to learn.
Yes.
And it's like I would say for me, being in a relationship, even like romantic, it's like a new level and like higher level of learning about yourself as well.
Yes.
Because we are like social beings. You're not meant to be like super isolated. Of course, it all starts with you, and you need to like balance yourself first, but still we are like, it's okay to have other people in your life as well.
Yeah, totally.
It's okay to be connected.
I feel like very interesting what you said. Thank you for bringing this up, because I feel like in the spiritual community, sometimes there's often this belief that like, spiritual, I mean, as in modern spiritual
like
community.
This conscious, working on myself, that
yes,
kind of, yeah.
Exactly, where they think because it's about self-love, you have to constantly be like by yourself. And that doesn't make any sense. Like the journey of self-love is with others, And now that doesn't mean that you might not need space for yourself, of course, but I think we've turned it into a religion.
Yeah, you have to be in solitude. I would say that I'm also very much alone, and I'm very capable. I'm super strong, but I don't want to always be alone.
Yeah.
I would say I don't need other people, but I want other people.
Yeah.
I want to have like social connections, intimate connections, and to be close with another person, because I've been like, I have been married and everything, so I have been in deep relationships, and it's so beautiful what you can build with somebody else, even with a friend. But of course, if it's like marriage or something, some kind of partnership, it's super deep.
Yes, for sure.
And there are like different layers what you're kind of building with this other person, and the kind of magic that you're building together. And for example, I'm always like 10 times more productive, and I'm in a relationship. I'm more creative. I lose weight, like, everything is more magical.
That's awesome.
Of course, there are also challenges, but still, you can also look at this as a way of growth. Even like the founder of Mind Valley, Vishen Lakhiani, he was talking about this in a podcast, that when he's like in a relationship, he's like, it's also fueling his business as well. So everything is growing much faster.
Yes.
So Mind Valley is also partially created because he had this Estonian wife, Christina, and they were like kind of like co-founders of Mind Valley, which is now like, billions of users and people in it. So they're like building and supporting each other, building together.
That's amazing.
So because I feel that some people, maybe they want to be so individual because they see relationships as an obstacle. But actually, if it's the right person, I feel it can really power you and lift you up and make you so much stronger, because you're like supporting each other, and
I agree.
In the good times and also in the bad times.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Honestly, it's a topic that gets me emotional, because the intimate circle started because of my own need of wanting to build meaningful relationships. Because I gotta admit, I consider myself, and that might be because of my limited identity, an individualistic person. But deep within me, I know I'm not that way. And so I'm trying to discover, like, I'm in the journey of discovering myself through relationship. I feel like that's my willpower area, to learn how to get comfortable with being myself in relationships, with being more vulnerable through relationships, with being more honest through relationships, but also, especially in the romantic aspect, to also learn how to set limits, as in communicate my needs. Because often what I notice, the pattern for me is to be very much focused on the person that I'm with. And I'm learning how to shift the focus into, it's okay to have an individual life within a relationship, because in fact, when I honor my individual life in a romantic relationship, I have more energy to honor the relationship itself.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to, for me, it's like you have to nurture both in a balance, your individual life, but also make sure that you're not becoming too much of a solitary wolf, and you're actually interacting with your partner or with your friend, or with whoever that might be, you know. So I think the intimate circle comes from something that is very intimate for myself.
Yeah, and I also feel that Barcelona as a city, it has like a lot of people who are into this growth mindset, but many people here, they're also quite individualistic.
Yes.
It's like, I'm working on myself now, I don't have time for others. It's like, okay, it's fine to work on yourself, and I work on myself quite a lot as well. But I'm also feeling that maybe there's some kind of balance needed.
Yes, I agree.
Between
100%.
like being in this solitude, but also being in society.
Yes, 100%. And I think we both can feel that it's so unnatural, the way that we are allowing our relationship to technology to take over our ability to relate to others. Because I don't think the problem is technology. I think the problem is that we're not educated on how to use it. And it's like, because we're not educated, it's almost as if technology is using us, or we are using ourselves through technology. Because I don't like to guilt external factors, but I think technology is a mirror that allows us to see where we're at as a species right now, you know?
The psychologist in Stephen Bart's podcast, he was also saying that nowadays, sometimes people get so alienated from other people because it's so much easier to be just on your apps, on your phones.
Yes.
And maybe it's easier to stay home with your phone instead of, going out and actually seeing the people.
Yes.
Because with this phone, you can be connected to so many people at the same time, but actually you're still like alone at home.
Exactly.
So often people, they don't bother to go to an event because it's kind of like, you have to get up, get dressed and go out. It's like, it's so much easier to just be online.
And it's so interesting to see how that will translate into every detail of your life, everything, where you're throwing a project and you're so obsessed with getting to the result, but you're not aware that your obsession for the result, it's because you've been, for your last 3 years, scrolling on your phone, getting used to the dopamine rush of getting satisfied for what you're seeing, which, by the way, you're doing it with no effort. So you're associating the dopamine high levels with not doing anything.
Yeah.
So you're expecting for dopamine to be felt in the being lazy.
So it has to be like easy. I don't have to
exactly.
get up. I don't have to get up from the sofa. I can just be here, enjoy my dopamine from Netflix, from scrolling, from easy things. So maybe even that's why people are staying more alone and isolated nowadays and living alone, because it's easier to be alone rather than build something meaningful with another person.
Yes.
Because I can't remember the exact numbers, But it was like astonishing how many people nowadays are living alone.
Yes.
Because yes, financially we can afford it. But it's like, okay, is it good for the emotional and mental balance? Not really.
No, I don't think it
Not
is.
really.
And I think, you know what I also think? I think these corporate tech social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, whatever, they know the effects of this. And that's why they're allowing social media to keep running, because even though they might be information they don't want us to hear, they're interested in us being slaves of the algorithm, right? Or more so, I would say, being slaves of our own addiction to the algorithm.
Yeah.
And so it's a way of for them to control the masses in an easier way, basically. Like, I can't see another logical reason, but that's besides the point. The point is, it's, yeah, I feel like we're lacking that sense of community and touch. And I feel like the intimate circle is a good way to start for me, because as I organize the event, I'm also a learner myself, you know?
Yeah, it's like if you don't have something, you can always, if you don't have a community that you need, you can always like create this for yourself.
Yes.
So kind of like fulfilling your own needs first with self-love, self-care, but also like fulfilling the needs of others.
Yes, yes. Because like we had a conversation earlier about how you're studying human design, but at the same time, you're creating a program, I think you said.
I'm editing my book about human design, so about manifesto specifically.
Yes, and you said the best way of learning
is also living it.
So yeah, for me it's the same. It's like, if I'm living it, then that's a good way to start.
Yeah, because during this writing process, I grew so much myself and I started living my design more, because I was going so deep into my own design, and there are still like so many layers. I just, even like a few days ago, I was going more into my chingies and like some kind of Venus sequence. Okay, how can I find Lala? It's all these, different details are coming together. So there are so many things to discover.
Yes.
And for me, it's very supportive and needed framework, because it helps me to make sense of myself and why I am the way I am.
That's super interesting.
And I would say the most exciting subject that you can study, it's always yourself.
Yes.
Because it's also endless, because if you put yourself into different situations, with different people, different places, you're like always changing. Yes. And yeah, this study ends when you die.
Yes. And it's like, through the many ways that you learn how to interact with the world, it's an opportunity to know yourself through that way, or through this way, or through, like, for example, I'm getting to know myself through sports. Now exercise is now a part of my daily habits. It used to not be as much, and now that it is, I'm learning about willpower. I'm learning how to integrate also the attitude of seeing exercise as play, which is a challenge sometimes, but it's also a beautiful journey, because maybe at times I exercise because I feel like I should do it. Okay, but how do I create a mindset so that I want to do it? And that also takes a lot of self-discovery and self-knowledge. What works, what doesn't work. Being a projector as well, like,
it's slower energy and more like, a different kind of pace compared to the rest of the world.
Yes, I feel like for me, it's like if, for example, I want to lift, which I'm not doing lifting yet, but I want to. If I'm doing lifting, right, and to me, the fun part of it is to actually feel the muscle, right? To feel it. it's not so much how many reps I do and how much I can lift. No, it's like to feel it, right? And when I use systems where I focus more on how I feel and not so much on how many I'm doing or how far I can get, to me it becomes more interesting and more curious and more fun.
Nice, you found a way how to make it fun for you.
Yes.
And if you're like focusing on the muscle that is working, this is also building the mind and muscle connection.
Yes.
And that's something that very often most people in the gym, they don't think about it. They're like, okay, how many reps, how many sets, how many kilos on the barbell? So they're mostly focusing on this.
Yes.
But you are doing the very thing that will actually build your body faster.
Yes.
As a projector, you found the most optimal and efficient way.
Exactly.
Have this, even like if you didn't do it consciously, you kind of found the optimal way, because the mind and muscle connection is super important.
Yes.
Because if you're focusing on the muscle, it's also growing faster. So it's in a way you already know how to do it.
Exactly.
Even if you're not yet doing it.
Even though I'm not yet doing it, because now I'm working more in calisthenics. What's happening now with calisthenics is that because I'm doing a challenge that was proposed by someone else. I mean, it's true that I felt invited, so I did it. But I think I did it from the perspective of, okay, get it done. And doing it from that perspective has made me not enjoy it as much, So I'm learning how to really go with the mindset of, no, I'm not trying to do 100 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, and 100 abs. I'm just focusing on doing one after the other, and being patient enough to be like, well, it will take as long as it needs to, So that's my willpower work right now. Yeah. Step by step.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Okay, so where can people find you if they want to work with you and want to go deeper?
So you can find me on Instagram, Gonzalo.Camprecios.
So it's also going to be in the description of this video, or if you're listening, it's also going to be in the show notes.
Yes. So if you go to the Instagram bio, there's a Calendly 101 call link, and we can have a 45-minute free session for me to discover what your problems might be or what solutions you're trying to create for those problems, and I can help you walk through the process.
So mostly about self-sabotage.
Mostly about self-sabotage, correct? Or being too self-demanding with oneself, right? Mostly that. So maybe if you're in a journey of wanting to, I don't know, compete, and you're comparing yourself too much with others, and you're self-sabotaging yourself, and you need to put your energy back in and come back to your center and really recognize your value, then I could be that person to help you out.
So if somebody wants to recognize their value, that's beautiful.
Yes, I would say so, yes. And cultivate the highest version of themselves. Then yes, especially through the power of being present and having more self-awareness around what are the blockages and limiting beliefs that are not allowing you to advance.
Yeah, it sounds like that this person kind of already has to have some kind of self-awareness, so they recognize, okay, I have some self-sabotage, I need help in this area. I guess if it's somebody who has no previous experience with that kind of conscious work, they might not even recognize that they need you.
Correct, yes. So usually we're talking about people who have done some spiritual work or know about spirituality. Yes, definitely.
Otherwise they're like, what self-sabotage? I don't sabotage myself. What are you talking about? It's like, nah.
Exactly. So yeah, usually it's those people and people who, even though they have some sense of what it is to live a spiritual life in a way, they're also very intellectual. So they try to understand things with the mind all the time instead of just living and experiencing it. So those are the kind of people that also would come, right? I would say men between 25 and 35 and women between like their 40s and 50s.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's,
So yeah.
Because women want to do that kind of work later, or?
Well, because maybe the women, the problems that they have to do more so with insecurities, or for some reason I attract also women. I guess I also have this feminine in me that feels like attractive in a way for women, not me. I mean, like the energy that I spread in that sense.
So you kind of like make them feel safe.
Yes, in a way. Yes. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Yeah.
That was nice. Thank you.
Thank you.